Surviving Rikers Supermax. The fight for every breath, the cell that wouldn't let you breathe. The sound hit first, a deep, desperate gasping that echoed to the tier. Inside a small, concrete box barely wider than a coffin, a young inmate named Derrick Mills pressed his face against a thin metal grate that passed for air. His chest heaved, sweat rolled down his tattooed arms, and the air was thick, heavy, like it was filled with invisible hands trying to choke him. "Co! I can't breathe," he yelled, voice breaking. But no one came. Rikers Island Supermax Unit, deep inside the jail's most restricted wing, was a place most inmates never saw, and those who did rarely spoke about again. The lights never really went out. The noise never really stopped. And the air was stale, recycled, and hot enough to make your thoughts melt. Derrick slammed his fist against the wall until his knuckles split. He wasn't just fighting for his life. He was fighting for every breath. A faint voice from the next cell whispered through the vent, "Yo, keep calm. Bro, don't let the box win." That was the rule in here. Don't let the box win. Because once you did, your mind stopped being yours. The guard were watching through the slit, emotionless behind their plexiglass shields. One of them muttered, "He'll tire himself out." But Derrick didn't. He had been locked in that cell for 9 months, 23 hours a day, for a fight that lasted less than 10 seconds. A fight he didn't even start. And now he was suffocating, not from lack of oxygen, but from Rikers itself, the noise, the pressure, the madness. He pounded the steel door again, the sound echoing like a drumbeat to the tier. Then silence. The cameras kept rolling, but Derrick lay still, staring at the ceiling, eyes wide, chest rising shallowly. That's when the emergency alarm blared. Boots thundered down the hallway. The tactical team rushed in, shields, gas masks, and tasers ready. But here's the real question. How did he get here? And what kind of place turns a simple jail fight into a fight for air itself? Because this is Rikers Supermax. And survival here is about more than just time. It's about holding on to your sanity long enough to see another sunrise. Fade to black. Title drops. Surviving Rikers Supermax. The fight for every breath. Welcome to the box. When Derrick first arrived at Rikers, he was 21, thin, quiet, and scared, though he would never admit it, arrested for armed robbery. He was supposed to be waiting for trial, but Rikers isn't a place that waits. It chews you up before you ever see a judge. The van that carried him rolled past the East River, its windows blacked out. The bridge to Rikers Island loomed like a concrete serpent. The other inmates joked nervously, calling it the island of no sleep. But one older man with a scar across his jaw said it quietly. Once you hit the box, you'll beg to go home, even if home is the streets. The Supermax unit, officially known as the Enhanced Restraint Housing, was supposed to be for the most violent inmates, the ones who attacked staff or started riots. But in truth, it was where anyone who crossed the wrong line could end up. Derrick found that out the hard way. It happened in the mess hall. A shove, a tray dropped, and before he could blink, fists were flying. Guards swarmed in. And even though Derrick wasn't the one who threw the first punch, the cameras didn't care. He was labeled assaultive and dragged off in cuffs. Hours later, he was stripped, searched, and thrown into cell 3B14, a 6x8-foot concrete box with nothing but a steel toilet, a cot, and a window too small to see through. That's when he realized he wasn't in jail anymore. He was in Rikers Supermax, a place built to break you. The first thing that hit him was the silence. Then came the sound, loud, distant screams, echoing down the hallway. Someone was banging on the walls, shouting nonsense. Someone else was laughing. The air smelled like bleach and sweat. He sat on his bunk, staring at the graffiti scratched into the wall. The box eats time. Count days by shadows. The air isn't yours. Days turn into nights that never ended. Guards shined flashlights through the slot at random hours. Food came on trays pushed through the door, cold and tasteless. He wasn't allowed outside, not even for a walk. His world was the size of a small bathroom. But the real punishment wasn't the cell, it was the mind games. Every sound mattered. Every whisper carried meaning. The guy 2 cells down, Rico, would talk through the vents. He told Derrick stories about men losing it, about the ones who started screaming just to hear their own voices. "Bro, you gotta breathe slow," Rico said one night. "They want you to panic. Once you panic, you done." That stuck with him, because panic was the one thing you couldn't afford here. Still, even breathing felt like a fight. The air was so thick you could almost see it shimmer. The vent rattled with dust. When the heat broke, the temperature rose past 90 degrees. Sweat dripped from the ceiling. That's when Derrick started to understand what the fight for every breath really meant. He wasn't fighting inmates anymore. He was fighting Rikers itself. And every day he didn't break, every time he took one more breath, he won. But Rikers doesn't like when you win, so it found a new way to break him. It started small, a buzzing sound in the light fixture that wouldn't stop. Then the smell of something burning through the vent. Then came the voices. "Yo, Mills, they watching you. Don't sleep." He yelled back, but no one answered. The camera in the corner blinked red, always recording. He began to wonder if the air in his cell was even real, or if they were testing something on him. And that's when he heard it. The guard's voice through the speaker. "You think you tough, Mills? Let's see how long you last without air." The vent shut off. Derrick froze. The air got heavy. His chest tightened. He screamed, pounding the steel door with everything he had. That moment was the start of his descent into the box. The moment he realized survival here wasn't about muscles or anger. It was about the mind. And the box was built to break the mind first. He fell to his knees, gasping for air that wouldn't come. That's when he whispered to himself, "Don't let the box win." But could anyone truly win in a place like this? The games they play. The first time Derrick realized Rikers wasn't just about punishment, but psychological control, was the night the lights didn't turn off. For days, he had begged the guards to fix the flickering bulb above his bed. It buzzed constantly, sharp, loud, relentless. When it finally stopped flickering, he thought they'd fixed it. But that night, the light stayed on. All night long. He pressed his face against the slot, calling out, "Yo, CO, lights? Come on, man, turn it off." No answer. Hours passed. His eyelids burned. The cell walls fell closer. He wrapped his tattooed arm over his eyes, but the light was too bright, stabbing through even when he turned away. The next morning, he asked again during meal drop. The guard smirked. "You want it off? File a request." Derrick laughed bitterly. A request? In Rikers, a request was a joke, a piece of paper that went nowhere. He'd seen inmates write dozens. The only thing that got was laughed at by officers who called it paper therapy. That's when he realized this wasn't about the light. It was a game, a control game. They control what you saw, what you heard, and when you slept. And for some inmates, that was worse than violence. Across the tier, someone screamed for hours, not from pain, but from frustration. "Turn off the light, please." No one came. The screams echoed, then faded into sobs, then into silence. Rico, the inmate 2 cells down, whispered through the vent. "They testing you, Mills. They want to see when you snap." Derrick pressed his ear to the vent. "Why, though? What's the point?" Rico's laugh was dry. "Ain't no point. You entertainment. You the zoo exhibit." Derrick didn't want to believe him, but he knew Rico was right. In Rikers Supermax, they broke inmates not by beating them, but by making them feel invisible. Days turned into weeks. Derrick's body adjusted to the light, but his mind didn't. His sleep came in broken bursts. He started hearing things, faint whispers that didn't come from Rico's vent. At first, he thought it was the plumbing. Then he thought maybe it was the air ducts. But when he pressed his ear to the wall, the whispers sounded clearer. "Don't sleep, Mills, they're watching." He jolted back, heart pounding. He screamed out again, but the hall stayed quiet. He wondered if it was all in his head, or if someone was really there, playing with him. The mind games didn't stop there. Sometimes the guards would slide his food tray halfway through the slot and leave it there, just out of reach. Then they'd walk away, laughing. Derrick would have to stretch his arm out, risking a shoulder pop just to grab his meal. Other times, they dropped the water pressure so low he couldn't wash or drink properly. He started rationing sips from his sink like it was gold. Every piece of control, the light, the air, the food, was another move in their unspoken game. And the rule was simple. Whoever broke first lost. The voices of the forgotten. Rico told Derrick that this part of Rikers had been around for decades, older than some of the guards themselves. They called it the tombs, because once you were down here, you disappeared. No sunlight, no visitors, no noise from the world outside, just the humming lights, the smell of sweat, and the faint metallic taste of recycled air. But the tombs had rules, unwritten rules. Never yell for too long, Rico whispered. They record you. Once you go too far, they mark you as unstable and ship you to psych. And psych is worse. You come back drooling. That terrified Derrick. He didn't want to become one of them, the ones who talked to walls, who screamed at shadows. So he stayed quiet. He counted his breaths. He made a rhythm, in, out, like a drumbeat. He started doing push-ups, hundreds a day. He did it to fight back, not against the guards, but against the box itself. Because if he could control his body, he could maybe control his mind. But the box doesn't play fair. One morning, they came for him. 2 guards in body armor, helmets on, shields out. He stood there confused. "What's this?" One of them said, "Random cell search." They cuffed him, dragged him out, and tore apart everything he had. His tiny Bible, his letters, even the small drawings he made to mark days on the wall. When they brought him back, his bed was flipped, his papers shredded, his drawings gone. He felt something in him snap. That night, he yelled, not at them, but at the air. He screamed until his throat went raw. He slammed the door until his fists bled. And when he stopped, everything went quiet. That's when he heard it. Rico's voice, weak but steady. "Yo, Mills, you lost this round, bro. But you still breathing." Derrick sat there on the cold floor, chest heaving. He didn't know if he wanted to laugh or cry. Because Rico was right. He had lost that round, but he was still breathing. And in Rikers Supermax, that was enough to count as a win. The letters. A few weeks later, a CO slid an envelope through his slot. It was from his mother. Her handwriting was shaky, but her words were strong. "Keep your head up. Remember who you are. Don't let them take your soul." He read it again and again until the ink started to fade. That letter became his lifeline. Proof that someone out there still cared whether he lived or died. He folded it carefully, hiding it under his mattress like treasure. But the box doesn't allow hope for long. The next week, his cell was searched again, and the letter was gone. Derrick called out, desperate, "Where's my letter, man? Give it back." The guard laughed. What letter? That night, he couldn't sleep. His mind spun in circles. He started whispering to himself, not prayers, not curses, just words to stay sane. "I'm still breathing. I'm still here. I'm still me." He didn't know it then, but that mantra would be the only thing that kept him alive in the months to come. Because Rikers was about to get even darker. A place where the game stopped being mental and turned physical. And Derrick would soon face something that would test not just his mind, but his very will to live. The riot in the tombs. It started with the sound of metal. A single, sharp clang. Then another. Inside Rikers Supermax tier, sound meant everything. It could mean a fight. It could mean madness. But on that morning, it meant something worse. Rico's voice came through the vent. "Yo, Mills, they moving." Something's about to go down. Derrick pressed his ear to the wall. He could hear shouting echoing from the far end of the tier, cell doors banging in rhythm. The noise grew louder, spreading like fire. "What do we want?" "Air." "When do we want it?" "Now." It was chaos. The inmates had reached their limit. After weeks without ventilation and endless heat, someone snapped. Then another, and another. The riot was born inside those concrete walls. Not from anger, but from suffocation. Derrick backed away from his door as guards shouted down the hall. "Lock it down. Everyone lock it down." The tier exploded in noise, metal, screaming, pounding fists. Some inmates threw food, some tore sheets to make ropes. Others just screamed until their voices gave out. The air grew thick with panic. Even from a cell, Derrick could feel it. The pressure, the heat, the madness. Suddenly, boom, a flashbang exploded 2 doors down. The shockwave rattled his bones. His ears rang. He fell to the floor, clutching his head. Smoke filled the hallway. And for a moment, all he could hear was muffled shouting and boot stomping. Then silence. When the smoke cleared, Derrick saw it through the narrow window slit. The guards dragged out 3 inmates, their faces covered in blood and soot. One was Rico. Rico! Derrick yelled. But Rico didn't move. They carried him away like a broken doll. That's when Derrick realized something. Rikers wasn't about justice or correction. It was about control. And every riot, every scream, every rebellion only gave the system another excuse to tighten its grip. The next day, the whole tier was on 24-hour lockdown. No mail, no showers, no air, just silence and the faint smell of burned plastic from the flashbang. Derrick sat against the wall, shaking. He couldn't get Rico's face out of his head. He whispered, "You still breathing, man?" But there was no answer through the vent. Days passed, then weeks. Rico was gone, and in his place came a new sound, the steady hum of the vent turning back on. It filled the cell with stale air, but to Derrick, it felt like freedom. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. But that peace wouldn't last long, because Rikers was about to remind him, in here, you never really win. The breath that burned. It started with the smell, something chemical, sharp, like cleaning fluid mixed with fire. Derrick coughed, backing away from the vent. The air felt heavier again. He yelled for the CO. No answer. Then came the sound of coughing down the hall. Others were yelling now, too. "Yo, what's that smell?" "Co, the vent." Derrick's chest tightened. The air stung his throat. He grabbed his shirt and covered his face, but it didn't help. His lungs burned. His vision blurred. He banged on the door, harder this time. "Co, something's wrong in here." The intercom clicked. A guard's voice came through, cold and flat. "Calm down, Mills. It's just a cleaning cycle." A cleaning cycle. That was their word for it. Flushing the vents with harsh disinfectant to sterilize the air. But the inmates knew it wasn't about cleaning. It was punishment. He felt his knees, gasping. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. Tears streamed down his face as he crawled toward the sink, twisting the tap. The water trickled out, barely enough to sip. He dunked his shirt in it, pressed it over his mouth, and breathed through the fabric. Minutes felt like hours. Then, finally, the air cleared. He collapsed on the floor, chest heaving, heart pounding. When he woke up later, his throat was raw. His voice was gone. He didn't scream anymore after that day. He learned that at Rikers, your silence was your only weapon, the mind's breaking point. Without Rico's voice in the vent, the nights grew longer. The air felt emptier. The silence became heavier than any noise. That's when the hallucinations began. He saw shapes moving in the corners of his cell. He heard footsteps that weren't there. And sometimes he swore he could hear his mother's voice whispering, "Keep breathing, baby. Keep breathing." He started counting cracks on the wall to stay sane. 1, 2, 3, for anything to keep his thoughts grounded. But every count ended with the same truth. He was alone. And in Rikers Supermax, alone was the most dangerous word in the world. The return. One morning, the sound of boots woke him. The food slot opened, and a voice said, "Welcome back, Rico." Derrick froze. He pressed his ear to the vent. "Yo, Rico? That you, man?" A weak voice came through, hoarse, trembling. "Yeah, still breathing, bro." Derrick smiled for the first time in months. But Rico wasn't the same. His voice was slower. His words stumbled. "They gave me meds, man. Too many. I can't think right." Rico had been sent to the psych unit. They doped him up until he barely remembered his own name. And now he was back, broken, drugged, half the man he was. That night, Rico whispered one last thing before drifting off. "Don't fight them straight, Mills. The box always wins if you fight loud. That phrase stuck in Derrick's head. Fight quiet. Because maybe that was the only way to survive this place. And soon, he'd get his chance to prove it. The silent war. Derrick stopped yelling. He stopped begging. He stopped reacting to the games. He learned the guards' patterns, their steps, their tone, the shift changes. He memorized everything. He knew which ones ignored cries for help, which ones smiled too much, and which ones enjoyed watching pain. He learned to breathe slow when the air vents rattled, to stay calm when the light flickered, to stare back at the camera without blinking, because in the box, every second of calm was a weapon. The night of the flood. It was 3 a.m. when the alarms went off again. But this time, it wasn't a riot. It was the pipes. Water poured from the ceiling, brown, filthy water flooding the tier. Derrick climbed onto his bunk as the floor turned into a shallow swamp. He could hear guards yelling down the hall, but they didn't come. Hours passed. The smell was unbearable. The water rose halfway up the walls before it stopped. He used a torn bedsheet to block the bottom of the door, try and keep the filth out. It didn't work. But something changed in him that night. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was angry. Not the kind of anger that explodes, but the kind that grows quietly inside and refuses to die. When the guards finally showed up, he just stared at them through the slot, eyes calm, breathing steady. And for the first time, they looked uneasy, because Derrick wasn't breaking anymore. He was adapting. The letter that never came. Weeks passed. He stopped keeping track of days. Then, one morning, a guard slid a new letter under his door. His heart raced. Maybe it was from his mother again. But when he opened it, he froze. The letter wasn't from her. It was from the Department of Corrections. Notice, your transfer to state custody is pending review. Estimated time, 90 days. 90 more days in the box. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt unreal. He'd already survived what felt like years in here. 90 more days meant nothing. He whispered to himself, I can make it. Just keep breathing. The fight for every breath. The last 90 days were the hardest. Derrick's body was weaker. His arms trembled when he tried push-ups. His skin had gone pale from lack of sunlight. But his eyes, they were sharp, cold, determined. He had stopped waiting for freedom. Now, he was focused only on survival. Every breath was a victory. Every morning, a small rebellion. The last test. It came without warning. 2 guards opened his door. Pack up, Mills. You're moving. He didn't ask where. He just nodded. They cuffed him, walked him down the tier, past cells filled with silent eyes. Rico wasn't there anymore, just an empty cell with faded words scratched into the wall. The box always wins. Derrick stared at it for a long moment before they shoved him forward. As he walked through the corridor, he noticed something strange. The air felt lighter, cooler. For the first time in months, he could breathe freely. He smiled, but just as he reached the gate, an alarm sounded. The guard cursed, pulling him back. Hold him. Transfers delayed. They threw him into another holding cell. Smaller, darker, no vent. The air turned heavy again. His chest started to tighten. He dropped to his knees, gasping. It was happening again. The same suffocating panic that had started it all. He pressed his back against the wall, whispering to himself, Don't let the box win. Don't let it win. The guards ignored him. The camera blinked red. He focused on his breath, slow, steady, calm. He imagined air coming in through invisible cracks. He imagined sunlight, trees, his mother's voice. And somehow, he found peace in that darkness. Because even in a place built to crush your spirit, he had learned the one thing no cell could take, control of his breath. He wasn't free yet, but he was alive. And in Rikers Supermax, that's the only victory that matters. The gate clanged shut behind him, and that sound, that hard, final slam, echoed through Derrick's mind long after he stepped out of Rikers. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just stood there, breathing. For the first time in over a year, the air didn't burn. It didn't choke. It was cold, clean, and real. But even now, standing in freedom, Derrick couldn't shake the feeling that part of him was still inside that box, the part that learned to measure time by flickering lights, by water dripping from pipes, by the sound of his own heartbeat in the dark. He survived Rikers Supermax. But survival, in that place, doesn't mean you walk away whole. It means you walk away different. The system never asked if he was guilty or innocent. It didn't care who threw the first punch. All it cared about was obedience, silence, control. And that's what Rikers teaches. That control doesn't always look like chains or batons. Sometimes it looks like a room with no air, a letter that never arrives, or a light that never goes out. Inside that world, breath becomes your only form of protest. Every inhale is defiance. Every exhale is hope. When Derrick finally returned home, his mother said he breathed like a man afraid to stop. And she was right, because after Rikers, even air feels temporary. He couldn't sleep in dark rooms anymore. The silence reminded him of the tombs. He couldn't stand the sound of humming lights. It brought him back to that cell where he almost lost his mind. But still he survived, not because of strength, not because of luck, but because somewhere in that suffocating concrete box, he learned one truth, a truth every man in the Supermax learns if he's lucky enough to live through it, that survival isn't about winning. It's about not letting the place kill what's left of you. He doesn't talk much about Rikers now. Most survivors don't. But every so often, when he sees a fog rise over the East River or the lights of a correctional bus passing on the highway, he takes a slow breath and remembers the smell of concrete dust, the whisper through the vent, the moment he almost gave up, and then he exhales, slow, steady calm, because that's how you beat Rikers. Not by escaping, not by fighting, but by breathing, still breathing, always breathing. Fade out, low ambient hum, black screen, text fades in, Rikers Island. Thousands pass through each year. Only some truly survive.